Hi there, and welcome back. In this video I want to show you some of the newer features of my SketchUp extension OpenAI Explorer right here. I just released version 2.0 and it looks a little different than before, so I'll walk you through the features. Don't forget to check out my book Architectural Design with SketchUp. It covers all of these topics and makes for a great desk reference. You can find it where books are sold. There's also a link to it on my site sketchupfordesign.com, together with lots of additional tutorials and news. Okay, let's get things started by looking at how you get the extension and how you set up with OpenAI, just to clear up some confusion that was there. So first of all, in terms of getting the extension, you won't find it at the extension warehouse right here, the built-in extension repository, because of Trimble's policies, and therefore you will have to get it somewhere else, which is either on my website right here, or on the Sketchucation plugin store or extension store. So if you want to go to my website, go to alexschreier.net, and then under projects, you'll find the OpenAI Explorer page, and then you gotta scroll all the way down there to right about here, where you can now download the 2.0 version of the extension. It comes in as an RBZ file, and you can then load that into SketchUp. I'll show you in a second how that works. But this is where you get the extension one way. The other way is, of course, through the Sketchucation extension store if you have that installed. And then from there you can directly install it. If you downloaded it from my website, next step would basically be going to Extension and Extension Manager right here. And then the button on the bottom, Install Extension, lets you install it into SketchUp. And then it should just work. Basically, it shows up as a menu item right here under the extensions menu. Once you're set up with the extension, you can just get it started right here. And then it depends on whether you're upgrading from an earlier version or from the current version. If you're upgrading from an earlier version, I would recommend you go straight to settings and change something. I'll show you that in a second. But if you start fresh, any of these menu items will basically get you over to the settings right after getting your OpenAI API key. There's also a menu item right here, which you can use to get to their website. And it'll look like this once you're logged in. You, of course, have to make an account with OpenAI. And the way it works is that they give you a bunch of free tokens or a bunch of free requests, basically, to get things started. But then after a while, you're going to need to get your own account and pay for things. It's all fairly cheap, as it turns out. But in any case, you need to make an account with those guys. And then once you are on this page here, you can just create a new key and then copy it. And those are mine right here. And then once you have that key, if you're starting fresh, you'll basically get shunned over to the settings dialog, which is right here. But you can always get to that dialog, using the menu item. Now you see my key here. This will be invalidated right after I publish this video, and won't be of much help at this point. But you just paste your key right into this field here. If you're updating from the earlier version of this extension, basically even the one before 2.0, then you will have to change this particular model name right over here. Chat completion is what it uses now. It used to use text completion. This is a change that OpenAI, made a policy change recently. And so all the newer ones will use chat completion, which is actually quite nice because it's a cheaper model for one, and it uses the regular chat completion, as you may know it from ChatGPT and all of those. So it makes life a little simpler for all of this, and so that's quite useful, I think. But you have to make that change because the older model won't work with the newer extension, basically. Then just walking through the settings dialog here a little bit, the prompt prefix could be anything you want. Now it's editable, so you can just type something in here that you like. Sometimes you actually may want to have nothing in there, and I'll show you a use case when you want that. And what you see here is actually different from the default as well. And I find what I have here works quite well, but you can keep trying different things. And I mean, this is part of the experimental nature of this extension. Tokens down here has to do ultimately with how much you're going to have to pay for this, because the OpenAI service, charges by tokens, still extremely cheap, but you can limit the number of tokens, which is basically the size of the request and the response at this point here, to something that works for you. Temperature is same as before. 0 is deterministic. 2 is very creative. And if you want to use this extension in a more reliable way, then of course 0 makes sense. But sometimes you may want to change that. Completely up to you. And then by default, the newer the 2.0 version actually has code execution turned off down here. So this is how it comes as a default. But you can turn it on, at which point it executes the code that it generates. And that, of course, comes with all the warnings that you most probably have seen already, which is that this is AI-generated code, and for the most part it works well. In some cases it doesn't work well, and you have access to your entire computer this way. So you got to be a little careful with what you ask for. But I found as long as you do reasonable requests, it works quite well. But this is where you have to where you can control whether you want to execute the code or not. So I'm going to leave it on so that I can show you how this works. And I'm going to just keep the settings as they are. Okay, so that's the settings interface. And then the actual dialog gets opened either from the menu right here, first item right there, or a key combination. And I find it quite useful actually setting a key combination. If you go to Window, Preferences, you could do that for anything. And at that point, of course, you can just bring this up fairly quickly while you're working, and then make a change or whatever, and then go back to working. So it's a faster way to bring this up, but you can open it any which way you like. All right, so now that we have it open, you can see that it has a new interface. It basically has a bit of a chat interface. You don't see that yet, but it'll come up in a second. And then there's a text prompt down here. There's also a settings button right there, which gets you back to the settings, which has the benefit that you can change settings on the fly while you're doing something. Turn code execution on, turn it off, however you want to work with this. So that's now a little bit better accessible than it used to be before, basically. All right, so let's ask for something. My default is draw a box. Now you'll see when it's thinking. This is, of course, not just thinking. This is making a request and then getting the answer back from OpenAI. And then this is how the result will be shown. The code will basically be shown on the, as the response right here. You see below that exactly how many tokens were used, so you can kind of keep an eye on that if you want to do that, and whether code was executed or not. And if there are any errors in this process, they will also be shown under this response. So that's quite useful now. It's all in one place. Beforehand, I had a few boxes pop up and so on and so forth, and that's not very nice. So that works well. And now you can, of course, see I got a box right there. Nice. And now I can give it another request. Color the selection blue. There we go. And there we are. So that works as expected. And now you can do multiple steps nicely, one after the other. You can copy paste instructions back down here. Any of those will work. One quick word of caution is that I didn't think that it makes sense to save basically the interactions that you can see here. So when you close the Explorer window, when you bring it up again, that's cleared. So let me know if that's something that might be useful, but I didn't think it does too much. Alrighty, so that's the basic way to work with this, and of course you can use it to create geometry, modify geometry, select geometry. I'll show you a few examples in a second, but first I want to give you a few other examples of use cases, because in my mind there are two more use cases. So one additional one looks like this. What if you edit Ruby code, maybe in my Ruby code editor right here, and you want to use this AI just as a code generation tool, a little helper basically. Now at that point you don't want to execute the code, so you want to go back into the settings and turn that off right there. And now you can ask it to generate code for anything. Make a web request right there. And there's my web request. Now I can go ahead, copy, paste, edit, and do things in there. So that's another use case where, this time we don't want to execute code, we don't want to run anything, we just want to generate code, and hopefully it's good code. But at the very least, now you can edit it, and then you can still run it in your editor or write your own extensions or whatever you want to do. So that's kind of use case 2 in my mind. The third use case, and actually I'm just going to reopen my window right here so that it's clear, but you could have just done it either way is fine. So the third use case, we've got to go back into settings. We're also going to leave code execution off, but we're also going to clear the prompt prefix up here so that there's nothing in there. So I'm just going to click OK to that. And now what you get yourself is basically, the ChatGPT chatbot. So, hello. Let's ask for, please generate a slogan for my SketchUp business. Ta-da! Now you got some. So if all you want to do is, chat back and forth and generate ideas or whatever, then that's your way to go. Classic chatbot behavior. You can go back and forth and it'll look actually a little bit more chatty, as it turns out. Alrighty, so depending on what you want to do, you'll see already here in the settings, change the settings as you like. So let's go back to the first use case, which is, of course, creating and modifying geometry. For that use case, I do have a little list of ideas on my website, which you can try out. And these are all prompts that have worked for me reasonably well, and they should work for you too, but you can at least use them to try things out. So drawing a box, I just showed you that, for example. Coloring items in a selection, all of that. Scaling items in a selection works reasonably well. This one's an interesting one. Selection. You can actually use it quite well for selecting things. So let me show you what I mean by that. Gotta get myself some, oops. Now we got, actually let's reverse those faces right there. Okay, so now we got horizontal and vertical faces. So if you now ask for select, oops, faces in the model, then it will do so. Look at that. And it actually, as you can see in the code, it basically checks the face normal to see whether it's vertical. So something like that works. Select all the component instances, which is of course just the scale figure right here. You can select component instances by name, and you can use it to select things quite nicely in here. There's an interesting thing too. If you, well, let me just quickly group this. if you want to select within a group, and you say select all faces, then of course you want to say in the current context, which means, I think it did it. Did it do it? Yeah, I think it did it. But if you're within groups, you have to say in the current context, so that it doesn't use the entire model for that. I'm actually not sure if it did it this time around, but yeah, keep that in mind that you may need to do that. So selection is useful. You can clear the selection. That works too. You can create materials, which is quite nice as long as it's a color, because colors can be nicely found. You can actually create, materials by theme. You could say like create 5 fall colors or something like that. So that seems to be working quite well. But if you try to create a material that has a texture, then that usually does not work, because for a texture, it needs to load an image and it doesn't know where the image is. So good chance that won't work. But in any case, you can create materials. You can apply them at the same time, of course. You can work with tags, formerly called layers, because they're they're called layers in the API. You have to call them layers here too. That is just the logic working here. But that works. Scene tabs you can work with fairly well. Oh, this is quite interesting here. If you have a typo, it actually understands it for the most part, unless it's a really bad typo. But that's quite nice. It doesn't. We all make typos, and it doesn't require perfect spelling. What else? Oh yeah, down here the listing of points is interesting. Center points or unique vertices. Whenever you do something like that, and actually we can do it with this here. I'm just going to explode that right here. Whenever I ask for, let's say, the unique vertices in the selection right here, then it will it will basically print those to the Ruby console. So you got to open the Ruby console as well. Right there. Then you can go ahead and say list the unique vertices in the selection. And then with any luck at all, it will do just that. There they are. Okay, so that's the code. But then down here you see also there's the coordinates for the vertices, and so then of course you can even format them any which way. So that's quite useful for getting data out. What else did I have? Oh yeah, you can erase things, like a random erase of 50%. That all works. Word of caution: be careful whenever you delete or erase or do any irrevocable things. But that should work fine. The last ones here are kind of interesting. So opening SketchUp website basically opens it in a browser. Some other websites it actually opens and then copies the HTML and pastes it in the Ruby console. So that does not work. But you can then just rephrase this. You can say open the SketchUp website in the default browser, and that should work then. Zoom extends, that works. So if we're in here, zoom extends. So controlling the view does work, although I found that sometimes it will try to change too many parameters, like focal length and all of that kind of stuff. So be a little careful with that. But yeah, so that's how the 2.0 version works. It's a little different in terms of the user interface, and I think it works better this way. I can't wait to see actually what others do with this, if this is actually useful. It's really just an experiment, and I just wanted to see what you can do with AI and SketchUp. And so far there are some interesting things and other things that completely don't work. And maybe one quick mention of that. So if something does not work, let me cause an error. I'm just going to say hello. Oh, it did. Great. Okay, that still worked. But anyway, so if you get an error, the error will be listed at the end down here. So far in this demo, everything worked, which is nice, I guess, but I couldn't show you the error, basically. All right. So I hope this works for you. Let me know if you create anything cool with it, or if you have any questions about it or comments. And yeah, I hope this is useful. Have fun.